Hiya, my name's Zoe and welcome to episode 4 of Get Your Greek On. Today, me, Laura and Rob will chat about music in ancient Greece. So, first things first, do you know how important music was to the ancient Greeks?
I think it would have been very important because they were really into their arts and the theatre and things like that. So I think they would have used it for a lot of events.
Yeah, I think they were very I feel like they were very eventy, and it was very kind of big, like harps and lots of kind of guitars and stuff. Really, I don't really know, but
I mean, you're right. The Greeks thought music was like a literal gift from the gods, that the gods created musical instruments and the scales, and that they gave it to the ancient Greeks. And they actually thought that the Muses, so the daughters of Greece, would entertain the gods on Mount Olympus with their like divine music and song, and this would actually make the gods forget all their troubles. The ancient Greeks thought it was just as important as physical activity for your mental health. Do you know where or when music was performed or listened to?
I think it would have been played at lots of celebrations, so things like weddings, funerals, and things like sporting events like the Olympics.
You're exactly right. So celebrations like weddings and funerals, rituals. So obviously they thought it would bring them closer to the gods, so they played it outside of temples, and they even had hymns for gods. The richer members of Greek society, they would have their own musicians to play for them whenever they wanted. In ancient Greece, you could actually make a living as a musician. And obviously for entertainment, so they would watch music be performed, they would watch poetry be performed, and obviously in theatre. Before we had theatre as we would know it, as an audience member watching someone perform on stage, it would just be people telling their stories. So these storytellers would travel all around ancient Greece from the countryside to the cities, and they would be reciting their myths. And they did this, they carried a musical instrument like a harp with them, and they would actually sing the myths. And then in Greek plays, it was often the chorus's lines which were with music. And in the comedy The Birds, the chorus would literally pretend to be birds. So imagine watching this as a Greek audience member, watching this massive, crazy song and dance in front of you. It would help them pretend that to be birds, and it would help the audience with the illusion that they were birds. And then Euripides completely switched this up on its head, and he wanted the main characters to display their emotion. So he used monodies, which were lines of text that were written to be sung by a single character. And it was a bit like in a modern day musical. You know how characters go into song when they can't express what they're feeling?
I'm singing, I'm in a store and I'm singing.
Yeah, so they did that in Greek plays too. Next up, we're going to look a bit on musical instruments. So do you know what they could have been made out of?
I know that with the lyre, it was made out of tortoise shell originally. So maybe kind of animal body part, horns or something.
I was just gonna say similar from animals, really.
Yeah, so they did use a lot of animal parts like bones, tortoise shells, like leather and hide, and strings were actually made out of animal muscle.
Oh,
yeah.
That's mad. Do you reckon they still do that now? Like, think about how many musical instruments there are with strings. Like,
that's the stupidest question I've ever heard.
Rob.
Probably not, but.
But the Greeks actually preferred instruments that had strings because they could tell their stories with them and they could sing with them while they were playing the musical instrument.
Let me tell a story with a bit of tortoise muscle. What the hell?
Now we're going to play a little game. Instrument or finstrument. So I'm going to give you some Greek objects. It could be an instrument. And you're just going to tell me whether you think it is an instrument or it's just something else. So a finstrument. So ropetron. Do you know what a ropetron is?
Finstrument?
Yeah, I'm saying instrument.
No, it's an instrument. It's similar to a tambourine. It's a big drum, and they used to use it going into battle because it made a really deep, frightening sound.
Great start for us, Rob.
We've got an oboe.
I don't know, but I'm going to assume that it might be an instrument because it just has it sounds like an instrument.
I'm going to go finstrument again.
It's a finstrument. It's just a Greek coin. Now, last one, the lyre.
Laura said that a lyre was an instrument about 10 minutes ago. So therefore, I'm going to say that it's an instrument.
Great listening, Rob. Yeah, I'm going to go instrument.
It's an instrument, and it's one of the most popular ones in ancient Greece. It was kind of a group of instruments. They all differed slightly. And it had about 4, 7, or 10 strings. And it would be plucked with a plectrum, so like a guitar pick. And this is what made it different to a harp, because obviously you pluck a harp with your fingers. And it was so important and in ancient Greece because they would use it to accompany lyrical poetry. Obviously, they love telling their stories. And Odette actually mentioned this in the last episode, that Hermes was thought to invent the lyre. He stole a herd of cows from Apollo and took them and gave them to all the other gods. And the gods took them, and Hermes actually got the entrails they were left. So remember how I said strings were made up of animal muscle? That's exactly what he did. He got the muscle, he found a tortoise shell, put it together, and the lyre was invented. Now, Apollo was obviously really angry that Hermes had just stolen all of his cows, but once he heard the lyre, it was so beautiful that all was forgotten.
The power of instruments. I wonder what made them think, oh, these muscles would make great strings on an instrument.
I could just pluck these muscles.
I know what to do with these.
Yes, that looks like a very good string, doesn't it?
So music and maths. The Greeks actually thought that they saw music as an abstract science. So philosophers actually studied music. Do you know who this guy is on the screen?
I'm going to say Pythagoras.
Yeah. It's our good pal Pythagoras. Him and his followers discovered that a piece of string makes a sound. You exactly half that string, and the pitch that the string makes is exactly an octave higher than the original one. And that works if you like quarter it and eighth it as well.
Aww.
So they knew that numbers and music were really intertwined. And it was actually Pythagoras believed that the planets were these heavenly bodies as well. And he thought that they created their own pitches and vibrations based on the orbits and their distance from each other. But we can't hear them because we're just human beings. My last question for you is, what do you think ancient Greek music sounded like?
Kind of just very jolly.
I think it'd be quite folk music-y, so that they thought all kind of dance around with each other and listen.
Well, we actually don't know how it sounded. Obviously can't record it. They did put it onto stone tablets and papyrus, but a lot of this has been lost. But one thing we are able to find out is the rhythms and the tempos that they used. We can see this based on the words, because the Greeks had long syllable words or short syllables. So if there's more long syllable words in a line, you know that the tempos and the rhythm is quite slow because there's less words in the line. In epic poetry, they used a long syllable followed by 2 short syllables, and this was called dactylic hexameter. So a bit similar to how Shakespeare used iambic pentameter, the Greeks actually used a rhythm in their poetry as well. So it wasn't until really recently that scholars have kind of recreated how they think that Greek music might have sounded like. So they've recreated all the instruments, people have learned how to play them again. And they've got the fragments of text that they've found and they've tried to translate it. So hopefully we'll hear a lot more ancient Greek music in the future when they find more. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed it.
I'm learning so much about the Greeks.
Yeah, I know.